Hello and welcome back to the nightlife. I don't know about everyone, but I have got so much adrenaline going right now. The first episode of Night Fight is out. History Channel did a banging job with this. It perfectly highlights armored combat, but I don't want to gush too much before we get into it. Let's start this shit off right. I'm your host, Ben Sugarman, and with me today, got the Trash Knight, Evan Ringo.
What up, what up?
So let's, before, because I have a feeling this, it was, first let's start with this. What my initial thoughts with it, it was, it's very digestible for, people that are very new to our sport, and even people like you and me that have been in the sport for many years. It still feels like a really good product. So I'm curious, what's your overall take on the first episode and the show as a whole?
Overall, fucking loved it. I was out at a casino watching with a bunch of people. Heard from a bunch of people who were just on the floor, like, "What is this stuff? This looks really cool." So apparently, it's translating to the regular folks, and like I was blown away, but I was worried that it was just gonna be me because I love fighting and all forms of fighting. But apparently, just no, this is it's working for everybody. So
Yeah,
I loved it. I thought they did a great job.
Yeah, I was at a bar, same place as you, out in public, and we got, I think at least 3 people came up to us and was very interested, because of course we went out in armor because we're complete fucking dweebs. But
Yeah, we probably should have done that, but we didn't. But also, fuck it, I don't care.
I guess a casino might set off a metal alarm or two. I don't know. We're at the Did You Fucking Dive bar, so it worked.
Also, I don't know. I feel like I've done enough publicity at this point. I'm just showing up now.
Yeah. Oh, I feel you. I feel you. But so let's go ahead and just jump straight into it. So first, right off the bat, they had introduced all the contestants. We had Lane Atteridge. We got Brandon Ross. We got Josh Kearney. We got Santos, the Trash Panda, which I thought was cool. They kept his nickname in there.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure give a special shout out. They had a Bellator UFC fighter, Gilbert Smith. It was great to see someone other than just our usual crew of friends out there. And I want to make sure to give him a special shout out later because it's I love seeing new fighters, and especially in a stage that big, and how fearless he fought. Like, just massive props to Gilbert. And of course, as well in that 6 we had Brian Durante.
Yeah, hands down, in my opinion, best fighter in the United States. I just want to throw that out there. Quote me on it. Fight me on it. Fuck you.
Durante?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So that's
best fighter. Just that all around best fighter. That's what it is.
That explains why he's your number 1 pick every time you guys have the draft.
He's my number 1 pick for everything. I never want to fight that dude ever.
No, I feel you. So let's go right into it. So first, right off the bat, they had a just free for all 1-minute rounds, and we got to see a lot of great strikes in there. Some of the main highlights, Brian had some great striking in the initial rounds.
He was on fire with that axe. That's probably the best I've ever fucking seen him swing. That shot that he put Brandon down with, if you didn't catch, that was into the armor. Like the one he gets on Santos, that's right to the hip, all flesh. Of course you're gonna drop there. That's a bad shot to not catch armor. He put Brandon out through the fucking armor, and I trained with him, so I'm gonna tell you, he was out for weeks after that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was not a fucking it's a little sore. No, he was out for fucking weeks. Probably 6 weeks, no training, no fighting, nothing. Brian brought another level to his axe game that day. It was crazy.
Yeah. And we just want to point out, I know they pointed it out on the show, but just so you can get a little more background on them, Brandon has fought on, the international team, both 16 on 16, 5 on 5. He certainly
10 on
knows.
10. He's I think the only person who's fought on every team besides myself. I don't think anyone else has fought on the 10s and on the 5s.
Can we make that an official category of fighter, the Triple Crown fighter?
Sure. In which case, then he isn't the he's fought on all the melee teams. No one else. No, Micah. Micah has done it too. Me,
Okay.
Micah, Brandon. I think are the only people who fought on all three teams, and Micah and I are the only people who fought on all three teams and done singles.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not to talk about me. This is about Brandon. Point is, Brandon's got a lot of fucking experience under his belt. 3 fucking teams. He's been doing it since Poland too. So that was, I think, his fifth tournament overseas. No, fourth overseas tournament. And then so dude's a vet, and possibly he's in conversation for the most dangerous man with an axe.
And of course, the second's gonna be Brian Durante.
Well, after that maybe, but no, I that was a highlight performance for Brian.
Right.
If we look across Brian's whole career, which obviously you don't get to see on the show, his output's usually not that high. Brandon's, however, is consistently at that injuring people, putting them out for a day or longer level. The only other 2 people I know on the East Coast doing that are Jay Brooks and Al Karen, and the only person I know outside of the East Coast doing that is Simon Rorick.
Right. And of course, if you want to see, as Ringo's talking about, Brandon just kind of destroying people with an axe, I highly recommend you go to Ringo's channel. You'll see a Nightmares vs. Dark Knights full chapter match. And, I mean, the highlight there is just Brandon just destroying people with an axe. But,
actually, if you check out the National Nightmares have their own YouTube, there's just a sweet highlight reel, real quick. It's just like, maybe 30 seconds long, and it's just great, unadulterated violence, and it feels real good to watch.
So, and
mostly Brandon chopping people.
So to bring it back to the show, one thing that I found really interesting, because also in that we saw Josh got a lot of great takedowns in there. And what I thought was interesting is, I thought especially the UFC guy, it would translate. Gilbert would translate a lot more with that. Maybe he just didn't understand that that's a perfectly viable tactic to do. But I'm curious your take, because at this past Rookie Rumble, there's been some fights introducing more just like 1 minute timed rounds and just racking up points within a certain time frame. So how well do you think you could see the multiple falls per, time limit translating into actual armored combat?
I mean, that style, I mean, that's how we do night fights, right? We let you get up. So I think that in the rule sets, it's viable. We might even be able to let it happen in a melee. I'm not sure exactly how you'd score that in a traditional melee, but I think as a strategy, it's a bad strategy. The problem is, while you're taking your opponent down, you're basically counting on that you're gonna have a better gas tank. Because once you get to the ground, you both have to stand up, and while it's gonna suck for him, it still sucks for you too. Like, even just standing up from a kneeling crouch in armor is a lot of work. So, and if we later on, right, when in that final fight between Brian and Josh, you see them both go down, Brian pops right back up, and it takes Josh a while. So, is your cardio good enough? If it is, maybe it's a good strategy, but I don't know. That's a risk. My number 1 rule of grappling: don't fucking grapple. That still plays.
Right. Yeah. So it's something to keep in mind. If you have a chapter match and at the end you want to fuck around with it, highly recommend it. Push it up the chain, see if it works. But moving back to the show, the first 2 rounds go by. See some great moves, and then after that they announce the 3 people going on are going to be let me see here. It's Brandon, Brian, and Josh, the initial go through. So then it's Lane, Gilbert, and Santos are going to be fighting for that last spot on the next round of 4. I thought this was an awesome way to kind of narrow it down to that last spot. And Gilbert, if you are listening to this, thanks again for coming out. But now you understand the pain of just eating halberd shots. That was a nasty
Dude,
one. Santos just landed on him.
yeah, it was the only clean shot I saw Santos get off, and that was a nice one. I mean, Gilbert just got beat up, and that's gonna happen your first time in armor. Um, the problem is like adjusting to armor. So few people just have that. Just your body is just ready to move in it. We're seeing more and more people, but even like highly athletic, motherfuckers who just have it in their system. You put on armor and just it's a different
Yep,
world.
it's a different game.
Yeah, my favorite for actually from that from that it was the third, fourth round.
Like the elimination round.
Yeah, the elimination round.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's late. I can't think anymore. Anyways, that my favorite part from that is right from the beginning. Lane just gives him that quick boot, and Gilbert just goes down, and then stands right up. Boom! Right into that fucking halberd. Like, oh, bro, you can't catch a break.
Yeah, I gotta ask Lane and how it felt, but I thought he really started to get effective. I think he was just starting to get a little pissed off. He had his axe on on the chain on his hand still, so I guess it still counts as he didn't drop it. But he just started laying some shots into the armpit and just started going MMA and getting some underhooks in there, and it looked good.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like the most effective thing he did all day. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
But then Lane clearly fucking hands down stand out in that fucking elimination round. Honestly though, I'm gonna disagree with the judges, and maybe this is that Night's All bias. I thought Lane had a better round than Josh on that first three. Josh had those throws, and those look good, but he also went down. So even though we landed in a dominant position, which does count, that's still down. So it's not quite as awesome as just taking the guy down straight up. And Lane was just I don't remember him touching dirt. He was solid throughout the whole thing. He was swinging his axe. He wasn't as good with the axe as Brian or Brandon. He didn't move as well as Brian. His grappling wasn't as good as Josh's, but he was there and he was solid throughout of it, the whole thing.
Right.
And I thought that was a better show. Personally, I'd have put Josh in. I think it wouldn't have changed anything. I think they'd have still gone through. Josh also had a great day. But I don't think Josh actually hit his stride till that second heat. The second round where they were fighing on the teams. That's where I think Josh started to hit his stride.
Yeah, I think we can both agree the Final Four was kind of, the people who needed to be there. Santos did a great job. Don't want to discredit him. And of course, Gilbert, thanks again for coming out. It was great to see you. And I was saying to some of the people in the bar, it really kind of, our sport is a niche sport and not a lot of people know it, but everyone knows UFC. So to see a UFC fighter kind of in comparison, and I'm not too well versed in his MMA career, but I can only say like the guy's built, and I can only assume he is a good fighter. Like he's on Bellator and UFC, so it's not like they got some guy in some local club. Like the guy's legit.
Just making it on there puts you fucking head and shoulders above any normal dude who says they fight MMA, wears a fucking tap out shirt. Like, making it to the big stage in fucking UFC, that's just hitting there. You're the 1%, baby.
Yeah.
You're better than 99%, if not the 1% of the 1%. He's, so clearly he was a good fighter to make it to that level. But yeah, it's just a different world.
And I don't know.
Speaking on Santos, I just want to say I think Andre's point. If you listen when Andre was breaking it down, he said usually that halberd sits behind a shield, and he has a backup, a buddy, and that's true. Like the one of the big problems that we originally saw with those big long poles in the smaller events, the 5-on-5s and such, is that you didn't get to have a buddy to protect you. And this in a free for all, it's even worse. So I think part of what happened to him is his weapon choice. He went out there, tried to do something new, and it just didn't work for him.
Yeah, I completely agree. I would never recommend someone take an axe longer than like 6 feet. into a match, especially 3v3, 5-on-5, unless you've practiced it with your team. But
Yeah.
moving on, we got our final four, or not final four, but we got our the second round, 4 fighters. We start going into the historical battle, which is Byzantine versus Viking. On paper, it sounds really cool. Of course, I thought it was a great touch that they sat down with some armorers. They asked the fighters, they put on the armor, got the weapons. They talked about their fights and how this doesn't feel that great. It's hard to move in this. I like how this feels. It was a good kind of like no bullshit view from a fighter saying, "Oh, this works. This doesn't work." But moving into it, like they got into the fight, and we'll go through some of the particulars with the fight. I mean, correct if I'm wrong, but there's not a whole lot worth note except for Brian breaking Brandon's axe. Which
yeah, I mean, as far as big moments go, there really weren't any. It pretty much came down to, and Lane even comments on it like, "Hey, we can't let them stuff us." That first round, Josh and fucking Brian just stuffed him with the shields, and Lane and Brandon weren't able to really do anything. Second round, they got out a little bit, but still mostly just got tied up. And I think a lot of that was Brandon couldn't fucking walk, right? Like,
yeah, very true.
He after that hit, his whole leg had fucking stiffened up, and he was basically limping and not really able to do anything effective. So I think a lot of that came down to Brandon just being immobile and not being able to, because he's usually a very mobile guy, and he got stuck in this position of just sitting there grappling. And Josh is a great grappler. That's not a position you want to be if that's not your game, and that's not Brandon's game.
And we've said it many times on this channel. If anyone tells you that weapon strikes are not effective, tell them they're a fucking moron and keep doing what you're doing.
Yo, just watch that clip.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, there's so many great, like, I think this is the first time we're really seeing some of our hits in slow motion, and it's just the production value of our stuff now. It's like I don't know, but I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight. I'm amped up.
I mean, I hope I am. I got work early in the morning, and I know you do too. So
at this point, I shouldn't even bother sleeping. But so moving right along, we got and I'm gonna be curious what other eras in history they want to do for the historical battles. But moving forward, it's just just my opinion. I don't think they work as well. There might be some other stipulation you could put in there for before you get to the one-on-ones, but just having a historical battle, I don't like it as much.
Here's my thought on that. Make it optional, especially when you're asking people to change their armor out. So the judges are judging on a number of criteria. They're looking at aggression. They're looking at striking. They're looking at defense. They're looking at a bunch of stuff. Right. If we that second round, we go, hey, in addition to that, judges are going to look at your use of historical techniques, your use of historical weapons, your use of historical armor, and you have X amount of time to put together a historical kit out of these abilities. Then it's up to you. You get to make that choice. You want to go, hey, do I want to put on this historical kit and go out there with an advantage, or do I want to wear my sport kit and go out there and know that I really have to fucking put on a performance to make up for it? I think that's the way to go about it. Make it optional. I am not a fan of asking people to change to a kit they've never worn the day of. I think it's sketchy. I think it's dangerous. Those dudes were wearing chainmail, and chainmail's protective, but like it's not.
I'm glad there were no two-handers out there. That would have been bad.
Yeah. Well, but honestly, like here's what I would have done if I was if I'm gonna drop my shield. I'm going to drop my weapon. I'm going to grab one of the other guys, and I'm going to pull his shield open, and I'm going to take a couple blows, but I'm just going to basically be sitting there trying to rope-a-dope and let my buddy come in and just work those soft bits, work the ribs that no longer have hard protection, work the liver that no longer has hard protection, and you're going to drop, and hopefully you're not going to have internal injuries, but that's your problem. So,
with 10,000 bucks on the line. You know.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you know, if you're fucking putting people in sketchy fucking armor, shit like that might happen. And like, luckily, we had guys who were either friendly enough or didn't think about, you know, ways of fucking each other up that well.
Yeah.
I mean, like, so I think the historical bit needs a little tweaking. But this was their first time with that show. I hope we'll see some changes if they do it second season, but you know, that was one bit that I was a little, you know, not happy with. There was a lot of stuff I was happy with. That was not one of them.
Yeah. I mean, I give them credit for trying something new, so, you know, kudos to them. And it is a history channel. They're incorporating some history into it, which I know, you know, if you've seen 8,000 Pawn Stars followed by Ice Road Truckers, it's good to see some actual history on the History Channel. I'll be one of those guys.
I'm fine with bringing history in, and you know what? If they asked us to, hey, bring in documentation of your kit, and we're gonna talk about it, and we're gonna put together, you know, we're only gonna put together people who would fight on the same field based on like a 50-year window, so you can only show up on this episode if you can put together a Viking kit. I would be fine with that, or something along those lines, you know. But in the end, let's be honest, if fucking I'm getting asked to go out there and fight in fucking chainmail, I'm probably doing it because I'm a crazy motherfucker. And I'm not the only one out there like that. It's just I would like to see, I would like to see to make sure that we are taking safety as the highest precaution. And I don't think that the show didn't do that. I think they didn't understand what they were asking when they started. You know, and I think now that they've seen it and now they've seen what it can do, they'll be a little bit better. But you know, we'll see.
Yeah. So at the end of that, of course, how it works, the two teams fight 2-on-2. The winning team advances. So even if you know one person's holding the team advances, not the two best fighters. So, but in this case, I think it's you know. Lane and Josh may have been vying for that second seed, but I think it was a good decision to put Josh and Brian in the final round for that last night fight.
So I definitely think while I think Josh was the fourth fighter in the fourth set, he might have been, I don't know. Brian didn't look as effective to me in the second set. Josh might have been in the best fighter in the second set. It's hard to tell, but either way, both Josh and Brian were better than both Lane and Brandon in that set. Clear decision, good call. I have no issue with the judges. Complete agreement.
Right, yeah. So, of course, the final round comes out. I do like the fact that they kind of assign the weapon and have a nice little cinematic shot of Jay testing the weapon out.
Yep.
So they go with the two-handed mace.
Yeah.
Not.
What did you feel about the smashing of the balls and like the ice shots from before? Do you like that?
I do. It. If you want to talk like the practicality of it or whatever, go ahead. But it does.
I want to.
Yeah, it does lend itself to it. Just like having Gilbert in there from the UFC helps kind of quantify it and gives you a baseline of what you're working with. I feel the ice and the clay pots kind of did the same. And, I mean, at the end of the day, no one's really going to be hurting each other or smashing each other. So it's fun to see some ice or some pots smash. I mean, who doesn't like watching that?
Yeah, like, let's be honest, destroying shit's fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I'm in complete agreement with that. But, yeah, so you got some cinematic shots of that, one-on-one. Well, how do you feel about the weapon choice for that? I get they got to stretch it over 7 episodes with that final championship match, but not a huge fan of this as a one-on-one weapon.
So I got a couple of issues with the big mace. One, I wonder about the safety of using those on the weight. If those are weighted to a real level, then I'm worried that those are going to destroy armor. Based on what we saw, I don't think they were. I think they were probably too light, which makes it basically you're fighting with a shitty longsword. and that's that. I'm not sure. Like the
Well,
one of the other problems I had with it, I didn't see any counterweight on those maces, and I mean personally, I like again, I'm not the history buff, so maybe that's the way to go. But like a counterweight really helps that bounce back, and I think we'd have seen better, more striking and better striking had the weapon been weighted like that with a counterweight. But then you're going up into, is it going to be too dangerous to use? And I don't know. So yeah,
yeah,
the mace was one where I'm a little hesitant on it. Um the but you know what? It worked out. We only saw one really bad shot that the it looked like. I mean, I don't know what
the
their shots
dent.
to those. Yeah, the dent, that dent.
Yeah,
But I don't know those shots to those bodies whether they were really landed or not.
yeah.
The
I mean,
thing
and
that
you could see Josh kind of like wince a little and like kind of I don't want to say limp, but you could see he had to walk it off a little.
yeah,
So and that's I'm curious how good that helmet actually was, and was that a shot that if you take one of our no shit helmets and put that in there, because that's not Josh's helmet. He doesn't wear a nasal, so I'm curious how strong that nasal actually was to see was that
I
one of
I
his
think
hardest shots.
I think actually Josh was using a nasal at that time. It's hard to tell. Josh changes helmets a lot,
That's true, he does.
so I don't know if that was his helmet or not. But yeah, but we already saw Brian was swinging at another level that day.
That's true,
So
he had a hot hand that day.
assuming that, assuming that was still going, that could have just been a fucking baller shot.
Yeah.
But also maybe just the helm is, maybe it's not a tempered helm, maybe that's mild. Um, here's what I would have liked to see though, less about whether what weapon they were using is more out of, it looks like they didn't get enough coaching on how to use the weapon. Some of these fighters are coming in with basically no singles background or only one or two weapons in their tool belts, and that first round, we you know, Christian Jay Riso, he called it. We only saw one fucking swing, and it came from Brian right at the end. Like, all right, Brian, we get that you can cross check. All right, Josh, we get that you can throw punches and you can grapple. You guys have a weapon. Swing that shit.
Especially
So,
Josh. He is by almost by default he is a grappler,
yeah,
and to see him swing, it's very very rare under real circumstances. But even still, I'm gonna kind of stick up for the fighters a little. I mean, if someone gave me that two-handed mace, I'm not. My first instinct is not gonna like try and treat it like a long sword and just throw shots.
right.
So
But I
like
mean,
that's a two or three shot, and then like I don't know. Like I wouldn't take that out for a singles match.
I get you. I mean, like that's the problem with it, right? Like it's a long. It feels like it's a long sword, but it also feels like it's an axe. How do you use that? But one
Yeah.
of the things that I'd like to see, Brian, when he gets in there and he's cross checking, he's got the. If he did treat it like a long sword, he's holding it in a perfect half sword grip. And one of the main uses of the half sword is a pommel strike.
Hmm.
So hold it like that and then punch with the end, even if it's the butt end where there isn't a piece of metal. If you throw that, you're putting a lot of power and torque onto that punch, so it's going to have way more power than a normal punch. And that way you can start using that in close. You can still have that good defense, you can still have a good grapple and good leverage, but start using the weapon. And we didn't see either of them use that. And again, I think that's part of the, I wonder if they, obviously we weren't on that episode, so we don't know what they got showed on how to use it. I know beforehand they were given some coaching, but I wonder if that was one of the things they were taught, and if it was, if they had enough time to use it, because it's hard to internalize a thing and then go out an hour later and use it.
Right. Yeah, and I could tell. For anyone that's not too familiar, I recommend you go back and watch on this channel. You can see a video about controlling the ring in night fights, kind of an intro to night fights, and in it, Brian Durante is featured on it, and he does a lot of the things that I highlight in that video. One of the main things is, what he does great is he had Josh on the list, he had him pinned, and then when he wanted to, he disengaged and got a clean strike on, then pinned him back on the rail. And it was really the only times I saw him strike, but it was Brian would pin him on the rail, disengage, get a shot in on his exit, and then either get back into that grapple or just keep hitting him.
But one thing that was weird to me is that first round, Brian's not coming out, he's not swinging. Josh comes out super aggressive, and he's actually, in my opinion, winning that until he touches dirt, right? Until Brian gets that weird, he's like, I don't know, he looks like he's pressing him down. I've never seen anyone else do that thing where you do that reverse curl with an axe and drop someone. Brian does it consistently, somehow consistently drops people with it. Josh goes down. That was the turnaround to me. Versus that second round, Brian comes out and he just, that picture perfect, throws that first strike, hits Josh, I believe it was in the hand. Josh takes a step back, and Brian immediately jumps him, starts checking him in the head, doesn't give him a half second to breathe, just keeps hitting him. And these strikes aren't hard, but they're enough to keep him off balance. And that's when he gets him up on the rail, just like you said, takes that step back, that disengage, and just keeping that constant pressure. Josh wasn't able to adjust after that. And so that change from the first round to the second round was huge. And and
it really is hard to adjust once he does that. But I think we both agree that the decision was pretty clear. Josh had initial aggression, but Durante won that fight through and through. And it was it just reinforces that point you made at the beginning of this podcast. Like, hands down, one of the best pound for pound fighters that we have in the ACL.
You know what? I'm not even going to say pound for pound. Hands down, in my opinion, this is no one else's opinion, just me. Hands down, best all-around fighter. He can do singles, he can do duels, night fights, he can do melees and 3s, 5s, 16s. It doesn't matter where you put him, he's gonna be able to do it. He can strike, he can grapple, he can run, he can punish, he can take a beating, he can give a beating. Just hands down, if you need him to do something, he can do it.
Right.
He can do it better than pretty much anyone else. There are people who are better than certain things, right? But I don't think anyone's the all-around package the way he is.
I feel you. We're gonna turn this. This isn't the Night Fight podcast anymore. It's just the Durante podcast.
Dude, I will talk for hours about my love for him as a fighter. I am fanboy obsessed.
He is so much fun to watch. But centering it back. Sorry, you finish. Yeah,
he's always smiling too. There were a couple moments in the show you could see he's doing that trademark giggle, and no one looks as happy fighting as he does. And man,
if you're new to the ACL and this podcast is your introduction, the show is your introduction, I urge you, please come to Nashua and please interact with Durante outside of fighting. Because if you think that's just like a stage thing, they told him to be happy. I lost count how many times I've seen that just adorable little grin.
I've only seen him angry at one fight, and I remember being like, "What happened? What? You're not smiling?" And it's because he just bought new gauntlets, new $1,000 gauntlets, and the articulation broke on them.
Oh,
he's just flipping out you think you'd pay $1,000? These things will work. Only time I've ever seen him not happy, and he was still happy by the end of the night.
Yeah, he's great. And I do want to highlight, Josh had a great moment. These type of moments always get me way too hype, and I feel like I'm watching, a football game, or I was watching the Eagles, because he had a moment where he lost his weapon, but then he kind of just squares up again and does the bring it on with fists and goes at it with fisticuffs. I'm like, all right, hell yeah, get in there. So I'm also curious. What do you think about possible? I don't think we're gonna ever implement it because you need to go get a weapon. But just doing bare knuckle singles matches.
No, I don't like it.
Great, it's in.
So we're the Armored Combat League, but we're also we're weapons fighters. It's not just about the armor, it's about the weapons. And too many people come in and say shit like, I just want to, don't give me a weapon. I just want to go out there and box. And like, it's
That's
not that
true.
boxing can't be effective, right? You are a weapon in your armor. Your kicks are weapons, your knees are weapons. We saw some of that. We saw some knees, we saw some kicks. They're effective tools, but they're just one of the tools, and you're never going to be as effective as you are with a properly executed weapon strike. That's the thing that drops people more than anything else. And anything that, helps push people away from that to thinking, oh, let me just go out there with my fists.
Yeah.
No, fuck
I
shit.
definitely I definitely agree. That was always good to joke around, but yeah, you need weapons to do it. But wrapping this up, Durante, congratulations. You earned that 10 grand. So next time we have a chapter match up there, I expect you to buy the first round.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And Josh, congratulations. You fought damn hard. You earned that spot in the finals. And to all 6 that came on the show, we want to thank you for going on that show and really making it a great hour of television. Like, I was thoroughly entertained the whole time. And just before we close it out, it's not a coincidence that every fighter from the Knights Hall made it on to the second round. Josh, who has his own MMA gym, the Ironside Academy, he made it on to the next round. Like, it's these schools really help. So if you're in the Nashua area, I highly recommend going to the Knights Hall. If you're in the DC area, go ahead and hit up Josh Kearney. You can find him at Ironside Academy, and continue your training. I'm all too pumped to see next week's episode. We're going to be doing these weekly podcasts. We're going to hope to put them out the next day, barring any sort of weird circumstances. But once again, Ringo, thank you again for coming on. Always a pleasure to talk a little Armored Combat with you.
Yeah, I love it, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. So, until next week, once again, congratulations to Brian, and we look forward to seeing you back for episode 2. Stay classy, y'all.
Peace.